As far as the recording goes, just so you guys know, this is recorded. These do get put up on YouTube probably a few weeks after Straight from Support happens, just so we can do a little bit of post-editing. But these do go up on YouTube, so if you like the content and you want to see it again, or maybe you want to send it to somebody, these will be up on the Fishing and Tech YouTube page, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And with that, we are going to get jumping into our first topic, which is what type of simulation is included in each version of SOLIDWORKS. So I'm going to go through and just explain what type of simulation you get when you purchase the different SOLIDWORKS packages and even the different SOLIDWORKS simulation packages. So commonly we know we get a little bit of simulation basically with everything. So we're going to just go through this chart and then I'm going to explain what all of this means. But there are 5 types of simulation that we can have with SOLIDWORKS. We can have Simulation Express, which is included just with your SOLIDWORKS package. We have the simulation that's included with SOLIDWORKS Premium. This is kind of like Simulation Standard Light. You see you have stress, fixtures, assembly, motion, and plot options. Then you move over to Simulation Standard and you not only get what you get in Premium, but you get fatigue and trend tracker. Then moving up to SOLIDWORKS Professional, you get design optimization added and several more features, including thermal, buckling, drop test. And then with Premium, you get dynamic, and what I see people like the most here is the dynamic and nonlinear. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that offloaded simulation going through here. But this is just the chart. This is the chart that tells you what you get with each simulation package. And what I'm going to do is break that down into each of the 5 components so we can see what all of these options mean when we're working with SOLIDWORKS simulation. So the first one we're going to want to look at, what is included with this Simulation Express. So what is Simulation Express? How do I get Simulation Express? And what really is included with that? So for Simulation Express, if you have SOLIDWORKS, you can go up to your tools, go to Express Products, and you'll see the Simulation Express button. And you're going to want to click right there on that Simulation Express button. If you haven't registered your Simulation Express before, it's going to ask you to go to My SOLIDWORKS/Express. You click this link up here, and you'll get a code that will allow you to put into this box. And from there, you get to work within SOLIDWORKS simulation. And there's a slide missing, so I'm just going to go like this. So you get to work within SOLIDWORKS Simulation Express. Simulation Express is basically just a lighter version of simulation. It can't be used on assemblies. It can't be used on multi-bodies. But what you get the ability to do is run a stress analysis on this part. It even has a little user interface that really walks you through how you create your fixtures, how you create your loads, some limitations of it. Like I said, you can't use assemblies. You can't really modify your mesh that much. You're kind of stuck with the mesh that comes out of Simulation Express, but you can get that, and you actually get, if you look at this, a very limited design optimization. So design optimization isn't included in SOLIDWORKS Premium or Standard, but you get a really limited version or a sneak peek at that design optimization. So basically saying, okay, I want this wrench to be just thick enough to where it can handle this amount of torque or this amount of force. You do have the ability in Simulation Express on a single body to go through and kind of optimize your design, working through with that. So that's Simulation Express. Now we're going to jump to SOLIDWORKS Premium. So this is the simulation package that you get included with SOLIDWORKS Premium. And a lot of times I hear people say that you get Simulation Standard with SOLIDWORKS Premium, which isn't exactly true. You get most of what's included in Simulation Standard with SOLIDWORKS Premium, but you don't get fatigue and you don't get a trend tracker. So that's just an important thing to notice here, that it's almost as much as SOLIDWORKS Standard, but you don't get those 2 options. And with SOLIDWORKS Premium, we get our static stress simulation, so we get the ability to run static stress simulation on assemblies, on parts, on multi-body parts, on parts with multiple materials. We get advanced fixtures and loads, so we get different types of fixtures and loads that we can go ahead and include in our parts. We get to make contacts, so this wasn't included with Simulation Express because there's no contact when there's not multi-bodies. Now we have two bodies interacting with each other, so we actually get to determine how those contact. Are they glued together? Do they slide along with each other? Do they go into each other? And we get to analyze that contact between our assembly parts. We also do get a motion simulation, so we get to analyze, okay, if our part is moving like this, if I run my car into a wall, what force is put on my bumper? And then we get advanced result plots. So with Simulation Express, you really only get some standard result plots coming out, and you get to print the report. Here you can customize those plots. You have a lot of different plots that you can go through and get with SOLIDWORks simulation. And if you guys have ever taken the simulation class, we really go through and look at what plots we get with each one. So that's what's included with SOLIDWORks Premium going into simulation. And so now I'm going to talk about the 3 simulation packages. So these are when you purchase simulation, they're not included with SOLIDWORks like the previous 2. You're now purchasing a SOLIDWORks simulation package either as a standalone to add to your network. We're getting this simulation package. It's all off by itself. You turn on the simulation add-in and you pull a license of simulation, premium, professional, or standard going through. And this is just a little write-up on the SOLIDWORks website, but basically what's the best case scenario for you to have these different packages. So simulation standard helps you know if your part's going to perform properly and how long it will last. So you get that fatigue added in, which is how long it will last, and you get the static to see if it will perform properly, and you get to test it out. Then when you move on to professional, you get to optimize your design. So you get to look at durability. You get to do some topology, so actually see what parts of this piece do I need going through. You can do frequency analysis. So if my part is going to be subjected to different frequencies, we can look through that, as well as a heat transfer and buckling analysis. So how is the heat going to affect my part? Looking at buckling, because we know that actually has different properties going through than just a standard SOLIDWORks static. We're now looking at what happens if our part actually buckles as part of the simulation analysis. And then when you get into simulation premium, on top of, as I was saying, buckling is different than static. We go even further into that. We look at dynamic stresses, so something that's dynamically, not just in a steady state affecting our part, but dynamically acting on our part. And then nonlinear, so we're no longer just looking at static parts. We're looking at how nonlinear static and nonlinear dynamic stresses actually affect our model. And so I'm just going to jump through here. Simulation standard, we've added on the trend tracker. So we've added on, we can track how our part is being affected through different simulation studies, and then that fatigue analysis that I mentioned earlier. So actually seeing, so after several iterations of this going through, what's my part going to look like? What's going to happen if this force gets subjected to my part 500 times? Then we're going to go into simulation professional, and we get a lot of stuff added here. So we get design optimization, which we had a light version of, if you remember, in Simulation Express. But now we get the full version of design optimization and being able to optimize our design, going through and looking at if certain stresses are added to our part, or if I want it to meet a certain factor of safety, how do I do this with SOLIDWORks simulation? As I said, we get frequency and buckling and thermal and drop tests, which is a very cool study. So actually seeing different things that happen rather than just our standard stress. All of these stresses act on our part in a lot different way than just a standard stress model. And then vessel simulation and event-based motion. So our part's going through a motion, and then a certain event happens. How does this affect our model? And then finally going into simulation premium, I said we get nonlinear and dynamic, and you also get nonlinear dynamic. So you get nonlinear static, dynamic, and then you get nonlinear dynamic. So all three of those are included. You get composite analysis and then offloaded simulation. And what this is actually the ability to, if you're doing a simulation on your machine, you can offload that simulation and have another computer, maybe you're working on a laptop and you want a desktop to go and actually run the simulation. You get that offloaded simulation ability when working within SOLIDWORKS. So you can have another machine run your simulation if you want that to happen. So those are the different simulation types included in SOLIDWORKS. I really suggest you guys take a look at which simulation you have. So as we've gone through here, you know you at least have Simulation Express. Go through, play around with that, and see what you can do with SOLIDWORKS simulation. And I wanted to point out that Fisher Unitech has some great blogs regarding SOLIDWORKS simulation. And I wanted to point out just this one we have, Getting Started with SOLIDWORKS Simulation Standard. So this will just tell you kind of some information about SOLIDWORKS Simulation Standard. Then we have others for frequency analysis, if you're interested in looking at that, or this is that design optimization that I was talking about before, and this is a pretty cool blog where Drew actually goes through, our simulation expert, Drew Buchanan, goes through and does a design optimization with his carabiner for rock climbing and actually analyzes how thick that design has to be so it can actually hold him or hold whoever the carabiner is working for, so that we know our simulation is correct, and it's a great little case study going through. But if you go to Fisher Unitech blogs and you look at simulation, you'll just find pages and pages of blogs regarding SOLIDWORKS simulation, SOLIDWORKS Flow, SOLIDWORKS Plastics. You see here we have 61 blogs regarding that. So definitely take a look at the Fisher Unitech blogs if you're interested in that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball over to Dan, and he's going to talk to you about 3D Experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. Just double checking again. Can you guys, Heather, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a brief overview of what the 3D Experience is and how to gain access to it, as well as kind of some pointers as to where you can find more information. So 3D Experience, if you guys have not heard that term yet, it's a platform from Dawe Systems, the same people who have given us SOLIDWORKS for so many years. It's a cloud-based platform where not only the CAD tools live and the design tools live, but also collaboration tools, file storage tools, financial tools, web tools to aggregate data and see trends and that kind of stuff. So it's a whole new platform for basically every possible application or every possible process a company would need. So this is certainly, I think, as we can all see in the industry, the kind of the future of the way products and collaboration is going, is everything is web-based, and everything is trying to kind of aggregate into one platform or one place where we can digest all the information. So the platform we're seeing here is just some examples where people are posting information, running reports, gathering data, just different things you might do on the platform here. And the platform, again, is not just CAD users as we know in SOLIDWORKS. It's everything. It really could be anybody inside of a company contributing or communicating on this platform. If you haven't heard, SOLIDWORKS has actually renamed SOLIDWORKS World to 3D Experience World. So the first 3D Experience World will be, February or first week of February or January in Nashville, Tennessee next year. So it's very obvious this is truly the way that Dawe Systems is going. They're still pumping R&D, still pumping a lot of resources into the desktop application that we've had for years, and they continue to develop. But this is certainly a very obvious new avenue they're taking, and we've been hearing about it for years. I mean, I've been in the reseller industry for about 11 years, and for almost that entire time, this has been being developed and kind of been talked about, and we've had slow kind of trickle down trainings on it. It has seriously ramped up within the last year or so. So it's very obvious we're right on the doorstep of this, and I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. So This is really just a brief look at it. I have a reminder here just to kind of jump out and take a look at what the platform looks like real time, and then we'll jump back into the presentation here just to close up with a couple notes. But this is a real-time look at the platform at the moment. So you basically log in with an account, just like you log in anything else. You log in with your 3D Experience account into what's called a tenant. So the benefit of that is it's your tenant, it's your space. No one else outside of your organization has access to it. So when you store a file, when you post an idea, when you put something on the platform, it's only going to your tenant. It's not going to the whole internet or the whole platform. It's just going to your tenant. And it's very obvious what tenant you're a part of, and as a customer, you're actually only part of one tenant. You would have just one when you gain access to 3D Experience. As resellers, it's kind of interesting. We have access to multiple tenants because we have ones for training, ones for demos, ones for showing new customers the platform. So I've actually had my hands in a few different tenants, but on your end, you'd really just have one. And on that tenant, you log in with a role. So the role really depends upon, I'll show you this screen over here. The role really depends upon what you're going to do at the company. Are you a creator? Are you a business person? Are you more of one of the project management team members? Are you a platform manager, someone who admins this platform, brings new users in and sets accounts up and resets passwords and that kind of stuff. So it's all dependent upon roles. And in those roles comes applications. And you'd really be shocked at how many applications there are. We're familiar with Apple and the Google marketplace and how many apps there are there, right? Thousands and thousands of apps and people developing apps for the platform. And that's really what this is becoming. I'll show you a slide here in just a second with a brief screenshot, but Dawe has a huge R&D team that is developing apps and creating new things for the platform. And that's one of the great things, that as you gain access to it in the future, the 3D Experience platform, new apps are just developed and made available to you as part of being a user of the 3D Experience platform. It's not like you have to install additional software or create new things. So things like xDesign or xShape. xDesign is kind of like a SolidWorks Lite. It's a very easy to use design tool you can use, and it's cloud-based, entirely cloud-based. xShape is a organic surface modeler. It's a true kind of push and pull digital clay monitor, and it keeps curvature continuous surfaces. So it's incredible. You can just put basically a blob of digital clay on the screen and push and pull it around, put a sketch picture there and push and pull it around according to the shape. Those are whole demos and whole tech tips amongst themselves, but we'll show those at a future time, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea for what's available to you. There's a lot more available to you as well. Some of these apps, for example, the SolidWorks connector allows you to use full-blown, we'll call it PDM in the cloud inside of SolidWorks. So there's full-blown PLM services where you can check files in and out, into and out of the cloud from right inside of SolidWorks. It's an application that would run inside of SolidWorks for you. Again, these are whole topics by themselves. I'm just kind of giving you a taste here for what's going to be available to you on the 3D Experience platform. So the question here is, what is the platform? We see what it is. It's a whole new platform from Dawe Systems. And I think the second question is, how do we gain access to it? How do I get this? How do I get started with it? So right now, the good news is that every single subscription customer, anybody who has a subscription license of SolidWorks, is actually entitled to the first level of access here called Business Innovation. Business Innovation is like the core role to use 3D Experience. So if you're a SolidWorks subscription customer, you're actually entitled to that already. The way you get it, and I'll show you again where you're going to find this information in a minute, is you just go to solidworks.com. We can go to Products, and we can go to Collaboration. And under Collaboration, you have 3D Experience Social Collaboration Services. And if we hit Learn More on that one, there is a Request Access button. So this is a forum where SolidWorks is one at a time bringing SOLIDWORKS customers onto the platform and getting them started with it. So I have kind of I'll return to the PowerPoint here for just a moment. I have kind of a recap slide here just showing this is just a screenshot of some of the apps on the 3D Experience platform. And again, apps are really broken into different roles within the platform, depending on who you are, depending on what your company role is and what you're going to be doing. But what we're seeing here is the full kind of power of Dawe Systems R&D and how much development power they have and how many things are going to become available to us here as part of the 3D Experience platform. So I kind of have, Heather, I'll call this a shameless plug here at the end. I made a video not too long ago on accessing the 3D Experience platform. It's a deeper dive into what we're seeing here. It's a deeper dive into how to fill that out, what that process looks like, what apps exactly will be available to you as a business innovation role. And I just kind of wanted to bring it up here as a reminder, and I'll show the video here as well. But you can go through and watch this. I have a whole 104 views on it right now, which is pretty amazing, right? But as you go through here, I'll kind of walk you through gaining access. I'll even walk through what it looks like in SOLIDWORKS once we pull that app up and once we show a part. You get access to something called 3D Drive. It's kind of like Dropbox or Google Drive. It's the same thing. You can save files and store them. And the cool thing is they're available in SOLIDWORKS as an add-in. These are SOLIDWORKS Dawe Systems products, so they tie in together really well. So definitely check this out. If you just go to YouTube and Google, look this up, accessing the 3D Experience platform, this should pop right up. I'd like to get some more views on this video, so hopefully I'll just watch it a few more times here. But just check this out. That'll definitely help you gain access to the platform, and I think probably answer some more questions as well. So really exciting stuff. We're definitely on the doorstep here of really taking hold of this platform and getting a lot of people started with it. We've already seen some questions come into tech support, and that's why I'm here talking to you guys today on Heather straight from support. Is what is the 3D Experience platform? Why did they rename SOLIDWORKS World the 3D Experience World? And how do I get access to it? And I hope this kind of helps to answer some of those questions. Heather, that's all I got. I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Dan.
It's certainly at the end too. I'd be happy to field any questions I could about 3D Experience, and just so everybody on the call knows, we have people here at Fisher that we are devoting to the 3D Experience and getting them trained up and getting them to be subject matter experts on that. So.
Yep, so keep those questions coming. We'll definitely answer them at the end of today's webinar. But thanks so much, Dan. That was really good content, and I know we have been getting a lot of information going into support regarding the 3D Experience platform, so I'm glad we have some answers. So our last topic is going to be, why did my part disappear in SOLIDWORKS? And I'm going to go through 4 scenarios where maybe you've opened up your part and you just can't see it. You can hover over it, you can see pieces of it, and you just want to get your part back and get working. So I'm actually going to jump into the software. So I'm going to jump into SOLIDWORKS. And for more fun, try not to look at the titles of my parts because they may or may not give away the answers to what's happening. But let's take a look at this first one. So I have a part here, and when I hover over it, I can definitely see the part. I can see the different pieces. If you guys took Essentials, you know this is the idler arm piece. That's the bane of many people's existence. But this is that idler arm piece, and we're looking here, and I can see it when I hover over it, but it's not appearing on my screen, and I don't have anything hidden, and I can see that the body's not hidden. What's kind of going on here? And I know it's in the middle of my screen because I can hover over it. So what I'm going to do is I can look at the part, and I'm actually going to go over to this Materials tab. And what I see is it has a color associated to it. I'm going to right-click and just remove the appearances on my part. and my part comes back. So what it looks like happened is if I go through and edit this appearance, so this green clear color that I tried to do, if I go to my advanced, I look through, so it's light green, what's going on? But what I could find is this is actually 100% transparent. So if I look through here, the transparent amount is set at 1. If I kind of dial that back again a bit, I could also get that green color. So I wanted it to look like glass but not be completely hidden. So let's go something around 80% transparent. And now I can see my part again. I actually still don't like it looking like this. It's a little bit confusing. But at least I can see my part and what's going on with my part. So if you're ever running into that issue, you can either just remove the appearance or go in and edit the appearance, go into the illumination, and just adjust that transparency amount and see if that allows you to see your color or your part as you want it to. So there's hint 1 in why did my part disappear. So let's get rid of that guy. Don't save, please. So this next part, so I'm looking at my part and there's nothing on my screen, and this time I'm hovering over, I did a Control 7 so it's right in the middle, and I'm still not seeing anything. So what's going on with my part here? Well, if I look over here, I actually have a lot of errors going through my piece, and it looks like the sketch 1, so the sketch cannot be used for the feature because its endpoint is wrongly shared. So I go through, want to analyze what's going on with this part. And if I can't see right off the top of my head, I can even go to Tools, Sketch Tools, check Sketch for feature, and I want to do a base extrude. And it zooms in and shows me, hey, this is why this part can't be used. I got a little thing hanging off here. So I fix that, I connect those two, I exit out. What's going on? Where are you? Looks like I have the same thing going on up here. Wow, I did not do a good job making this sketch. Go to my tools. I'm going to check my sketch for features again. Check for a base extrude. Please show me where this is happening. Oh, I have a little guy up there. So I have a little guy hanging out up there. I'll delete him. Now we create my sketch. And my part comes back. There are still some errors there. There are still some things I need to fix. But at least my part is back. So if your part's missing and you see all those errors, it's not a reason to go ahead and just blank start over. Oh no, my part is ruined forever. Sometimes it's just something wrong with that first sketch. I go through and I fix that error, and the majority of my part came back. Now I do have some things I need to fix on sketch 3 and 6 and 13, but at least I have my part. I have the majority of what I've been working on all day. So remember, if your part has disappeared and you have all the errors there, just start at the first thing with the error, go through, take a look at the errors, and don't forget about that Check Sketch for Features tool. I really like that tool because it kind of takes the, especially if you have a more complicated sketch than just a square, it really takes the guesswork out of what's wrong with my part. All right, don't save, please. All right, let's look at this other one. So here I have another part, and this is actually an assembly, and I want to see my part, but it's not here, and I'm hovering and nothing's appearing, and what's going on here? So the first thing I like to do, if I'm hovering and I'm not appearing, I'm going to do a Control-7 and an F, and this is going to fit that part to my screen. Still not seeing it here. And what I see here, if I start to hover over, it's actually very zoomed in on this part for some reason. For some reason, my part is very zoomed in on one specific part. Let's see if I have any floating things off in space. So I turn on my origins, I see right there that that's where my part is sitting. So I'm going to just kind of zoom to that area, getting a better idea of what's going on. And there we go. So that's my whole assembly there. So it looks like my assembly was really zoomed out. But I notice whenever I hit F, it's going away. What that indicates to me is I have something off in this space that's taking up, that's really far off. And when I go and blank select that white space over here, I notice it selects the battery. So you know what? I can easily just put another battery back into this. I'm going to delete that guy, do a zoom to fit, and now when I zoom to fit, my part's just right here. I could have also gone, found the battery, and started moving it back over to the location I wanted, or a little trick I like to do is I can just take the battery, take its origin, take a piece I know is in the right spot, and just mate those two origins. That's going to throw the battery over to that guy's origin. So now when I do an F, it's there. It's in the wrong spot, but then I can just go through and remove that mate. But now I'll have an easier time moving it around since my part's not so far zoomed out. So that's another reason your part could be missing. I did the F, it didn't work, the fit to screen. So I can find it here, and a really good hint on that is just turning on those origins so you can see the coordinate systems within the parts, because that'll kind of give away what's happening there. All right, I'm going to close that out. All right, and this last one, so once again, it feels like the material. I can hover over and I can see my parts right there, but it's just not appearing. I go in and I check the color. I'll remove all appearances, because Heather said that's what'll fix it, and that did not fix it. So what's going on here? Now I remove my appearance for no reason, so I'm going to Control V to get that back. So if I go and I look at my solid bodies folder, I know that this is notice that this is a hidden thing. Now this solid bodies folder is only going to appear if you have multiple bodies or you've turned it on. So if you don't have the solid bodies folder turned on, an easy trick I like to do is just go to the very bottom feature in the part, right click, and just click on that eyeball, and that will show it. And even if I hid a different feature here, going to the bottom feature and clicking the eyeball will just show that whole part going through. So now I can see my entire part, and because I do have my solid bodies folder showing, I can see that that's there. Another hint for this guy, even if you don't have your solid bodies folder showing, you have this little caret out here, and you can go in and see if things are hidden or transparent and toggle that there as well. I'm just going to show this guy, and he's back. All right, and let's go ahead and don't save. And those are 4 reasons why we just might open up our SOLIDWORKS part and our part might be just completely missing in there. One bonus thing I want to show you guys, so let's open up my hidden part again because I did see this. This isn't actually a part that's not able to be seen, but sometimes what I've seen happen is you're looking at your part and it's completely occluded, it's completely black, you've added a material onto here and it's just still not appearing correctly. So what's going on here is there's no light shining on your part. So you're going to want to go over into that Display Manager tab. You're going to want to look at the scenes and just turn on your lights so that you can see the part. So I have this one directional light. And if I did ambient off and this off, it's dark, but when I turn one of the lights on, I can see it there. There are a few shadows, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on my ambient light as well, because that looks a little bit better. So just remember, sometimes if it's just black and occluded, your lights could be off on your part, so just turning those on really helps out. And so that's a pretty good overview of just some common reasons we see why our parts disappear